and I'm even more thrilled to witness the audio explosion that is about to happen when I say, please join me in welcoming and reminding them why they came back to Cincinnati for this book tour. Ladies and gentlemen, join me in welcoming Hank and John Green.
New book totals all the way down. So, I think all you need to know for this section of the book is that the story is narrated by a 16-year-old girl named Asa who struggles with these obsessive thought spirals. One of the ways that she manages these fears that she has is by doing this repetitive action where she presses her thumbnail into the finger pad of her middle finger, and slowly over many years a callus is built up on her finger pad, so it's really easy for her to crack open the skin, and sometimes she gets worried that there's an infection in there and that she needs to drain this kind of like perpetual wound that she has. She covers it up with a Band-Aid because she's embarrassed about it. In the part of the book that I'm going to read now, Asa has just met up with her friend Davis, who she was friends with many years ago. They haven't seen each other in a long time, and now Davis is driving Asa and her best friend Daisy back to Asa's house. They live across the White River from each other in Indianapolis, where I'm from. And it's only about 500 yards as the crow flies between their two houses, but the geography of the White River and also I guess the political geography of Indianapolis dictates that in this particular case the crow does not fly. Although only the river separated us, it was a 10-minute winding drive back to my house because there's only one bridge in my neighborhood. We were quiet except for my occasional directions. And when we at last pulled into my driveway, I asked for his phone and typed my number into it. Daisy got out without saying goodbye, and I was about to do the same, but when I gave him his phone back, Davis took my right hand and turned it over, palm up. I remember this, he said, and I followed his eyes down to the Band-Aid covering my fingertip. I pulled my hand away and closed my fingers into a fist. Does it hurt? He asked. For some reason, I wanted to tell him the truth. Whether it hurts is kind of irrelevant, I said. That's a pretty good life motto. Yeah, I don't know. Okay, I should go. Right before I closed the door, he said, it's good to see you, Asa. Yeah, I said. You too. When I got home, I watched TV with Mom, but I couldn't stop thinking about Davis looking down at my finger, holding my hand in his. Turn off your phones. It's okay. I don't know that I think mine is, to be fair. It's like 95% of the phones are on yours, just had the misfortune of ringing. It's not your fault. It's not my fault. When I got home, I watched TV with Mom, but I couldn't stop thinking about Davis looking down at my finger, holding my hand in his. I have these thoughts that Dr. Karen Cinci calls intrusives, but the first time she said it, I heard invasives, which I like better, because like invasive weeds or something, these thoughts seem to arrive at my biosphere from some faraway land, and then they spread out of control. I guess everyone has them. You look out from over a bridge or whatever, and it occurs to you out of nowhere that you could just jump. And then if you're like most people, you think, well, that was weird, and you move on with your life. But for some people, the invasive can kind of take over, crowding out all the other thoughts until it's the only thought you're able to have, the one you're perpetually either thinking or distracting yourself from. You're watching TV with your mom, this show about time-traveling crime solvers, and you remember a boy holding your hand, looking at your finger, and then a thought occurs to you. You should unwrap that Band-Aid and check to see if there's an infection. You don't actually want to do this. It's just an invasive. Everyone has them. But you can't shut yours up. Since you've had a reasonable amount of cognitive behavioral therapy, you tell yourself, I am not my thoughts, even though deep down you're not exactly sure what that makes you. Then you tell yourself to click a little X in the top corner of the thought to make it go away, and maybe it does for a moment. You're back in your house on the couch next to your mom, and then your brain says, well, wait. What if your finger's infected? Why not just check? The cafeteria wasn't exactly the most sanitary place to reopen that wound, and then you were in the river. Now you're nervous because you've previously attended this exact rodeo on thousands of occasions, and also because you want to choose the thoughts that are called yours. But the river was filthy. Had you gotten some river water onto your hand, it wouldn't take much. Time to unwrap the Band-Aid. You tell yourself that you were careful not to touch the water, but then yourself replies, but what if you touched something that touched the water? And then you tell yourself that this wound is almost certainly not infected, but the distance you've created with that almost gets filled by the thought. You need to check for infection. Just check it so we can calm down. And then find, okay, you excuse yourself to the bathroom and slip off the Band-Aid to discover that there isn't blood, but there might be a bit of moisture on the bandage pad, and you hold the Band-Aid up to the yellow light in the bathroom, and yes, that definitely looks like moisture. Of course, it could be sweat, also might be water from the river, worse still, seropurulent drainage, a sure sign of infection. So you find the hand sanitizer in the medicine cabinet, and you squeeze some onto your fingertip, which burns like hell. And then you wash your hands thoroughly, singing the ABCs while you do to make sure that you've scrubbed for the full 20 seconds recommended by the Centers for Disease Control, and then you carefully dry your hands with a towel, and then you dig your thumbnail all the way into the crack in the callus until it starts bleeding, and you squeeze the blood out for as long as it comes, and then you blot the wound dry with a tissue. You take a Band-Aid from inside your jeans pocket, where there is never a shortage of them, and you carefully reapply the bandage. You return to the couch to watch TV, and for a few or many minutes, you feel the shivering jolt of the tension easing, the relief of giving in to the lesser angels of your nature. And then 2 or 5 or 600 minutes pass before you start to wonder, wait, did I get all the pus out? Was there pus even, or just sweat? If it was pus, you might need to drain the wound again. And the spiral tightens like that forever. Thanks. So in that scene of the book, Aza can't pay attention to the TV show she is ostensibly watching. Earlier in the novel, she fails to notice that her best friend has dyed her hair. She can't pay attention in conversations. In short, she is a truly terrible detective. Obsessiveness and observational skills have been linked for a long time in the popular imagination, from Sherlock Holmes through to the TV show Monk. And I'm sure that must be true to some people's experience, but it isn't true to Aza's, or for that matter, to mine. I wanted to write about a detective whose brain disorder is distinctly unhelpful. And although this book is entirely fictional, and Aza's challenges are very different from mine, when it came to her mental illness, I was writing partly from within my own experience. I had a really happy childhood. I had kind, supportive, loving parents. I had a wonderful brother, I had great friends, but I was not a happy child. A lot of my childhood was consumed with obsessive worry and dread. As a kid, it was often a fear of poisoning. I would become convinced that I'd eaten something that was going to kill me, and I couldn't stop thinking about it and worrying about it, and I would lose hours every day to this worry. Eventually, I developed behaviors to cope with it. I would only eat certain foods at certain times. I would only sit in certain chairs in the cafeteria. I now realize that I had and have obsessive-compulsive disorder, but at the time I didn't know that. I had no way to give expression or form to the experience of my thoughts, because it was so deep down and abstract and scary. I couldn't talk about it the way you can talk about a table or chairs. I didn't have language for the fear that this worry caused me, and that made it all the more painful and also all the more isolating because I couldn't share it. It felt like there was this monster, like a real monster that lived inside of me. It felt like I was trapped in a prison cell that was the exact size and shape of my body. It felt like I could say what it felt like, but I struggled to say what it was. And in truth, I struggled to say what it is. But most of all, it made me feel like a passenger in my own consciousness. I mean, if I can't stop thinking these thoughts that I don't want to have, then whose thoughts are they?
Who's the captain of this ship I call myself? It's clearly not myself, right? It's the monster's self. I'm like riding shotgun. In Turtles All the Way Down, Aza's lack of control over her thoughts is hugely destabilizing to her sense of self. She has to navigate a constantly fracturing and collapsing understanding of what or who she is, but she doesn't only have to build a definition of self that's independent from her intrusive thoughts and compulsive behaviors, she also has to figure out how to escape what she calls the skin-encased bacterial colony known as Aza, to imagine the lives of other people with some compassion and some semblance of real understanding, which I think in the end is the actual key to solving any mystery, and also a challenge for each of us. I have a story about this, which some of you may have heard, and if you haven't, I'm sorry, but I'll tell it better this time. In 2003, I was living in Chicago with 3 roommates, Katie, Shannon, and Hassan. Hassan's family was from Kuwait, but a lot of his extended family lived in Iraq. And during the US-led forces' invasion of Iraq in 2003, he lost touch with a lot of his family for several weeks. It was a very scary time for Hassan. Eventually, all of his family was fine, but it was a really scary time. And one of the ways he coped with it was to sit on the couch and watch TV news all day, every day. So if you wanted to hang out with Hassan, you had to sit on the couch with him and watch the news. That is all a preface to why I was watching cable news. So, one day, I was watching the news with Hassan, and it was one of those situations where new footage is coming into the studio, and just as the viewers are seeing it for the first time, the anchor is also seeing it for the first time, but because he has a microphone, he's an expert, and we have to listen to what he has to say. So, the camera's panning across this house that has a huge hole in it, apparently caused by a bomb. And over that hole is a huge piece of plywood. And on the plywood is scrawled in black spray paint, very angry-looking Arabic graffiti. And the guy on TV is talking about, you know, like the anger on the Arab street and everything. And my friend Hassan starts to laugh. And I said, what's so funny? And he said, the graffiti. And I said, what's funny about it? And he said, it says, happy birthday, sir, despite the circumstances. And it seems to me that like the central challenge of the human life is that on a minute-by-minute basis, it is almost impossible to consider the happy birthday, sir, despite the circumstances possibility, right? Like, all of us are so deeply affected by our biases and our experiences and our expectations that we inevitably project that onto everyone and everything we encounter. And that's because we're stuck inside of this one consciousness for the whole time we're here, right? Like, the whole time I'm alive, I'm only going to see the world from this one particular vantage point. I wish I could say that I felt like stories were some magical way out of this problem, that reading and writing can make you purely empathetic, but I just don't think that's true. I do think stories can help us to empathize, but I don't think they can tell us exactly what it's like to be someone else, which is why we mustn't think that reading a book or even reading many books makes us qualified to speak over other people or on behalf of them. But I do think we can get better at listening and at crediting others with personhood and at remembering and understanding that everyone has birthdays. For me, at least, the best way I found to improve my listening is through stories. My kids are my kids. My parents are my parents. But in To Kill a Mockingbird, Scout isn't my anything. Instead, I'm asked to live inside of her consciousness, to see the world as she sees it. I think every novel is a way out of your life and into others. In Turtles All the Way Down, I wanted to give people a look into what it's like to be stuck with a mind that doesn't always feel like it's yours, and maybe to help people who struggle with that terror to feel less alone in it. Of course, reading and writing aren't only about empathy, but ultimately I do think that's why I both read and write. I am reminding myself, convincing myself, that other people are real, that their love and loss is as real and as important as my own. And each time I relearn that truth, I understand that I too am real, that I may not always control my thoughts, but that I am nonetheless a real creature, a singular noun, capable of loving, and being loved. Not just capable of love, in fact, but also worthy of it. Thank you.
Alicia, you're going to start warming up the, there we go.
On it.
It's still a red light.
Okay.
There, it's a green light.
So, I'm so excited to be here in Cincinnati tonight. We were here 5 years ago. It's wonderful to be back. It's really exciting. I'm also really excited to be on the road with my brother for the next one. He's an amazing person and a wonderful performer and a pleasure to be around, genuinely. And really, this is the only time I get to spend like a month at a time with my brother. The last time was 6 years ago. So I'm having a great time. But I have to say I'm also really enjoying spending a month with someone else who you get to meet tonight, and whose passion and enthusiasm for their work and their fascination with it has been a real inspiration to me. I think you're starting to see on the screen now the beginning of this PowerPoint presentation that we're going to hear now. So without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, Dr. Lawrence Turtleman.